The 2026 Dietary Guidelines for Americans have been out since January 7th, 2026. I believe many dietitians, doctors, or scholars with similar stances have come forward to express their support for whole foods, returning to natural diets, or claiming that ultra-processed foods are the root of all diseases.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, see, I told you to eat whole foods. I wasn't lying. Now even the big boss in the US is backing it up. Wow, it looks super inspiring. After all, natural is the healthiest.
Right. However, behind this seemingly healthy facade, how much risk and crisis are hidden? Have the experts mentioned that? Hello, welcome to Thinking Factory. Let me use a different way of thinking to guide you through the story behind this. Hi everyone, I'm Wyke. At the beginning of 2026, the US released the latest dietary guidelines, completely overturning the knowledge of the past 40 years. But before we discuss what to eat, have you ever wondered how the people who make these rules are selected?
Aren't they just a group of scientists in white coats, locked in a lab doing experiments, comparing data, and discussing it?
Wrong. Before this wave of reform in 2026, this was a perfect black box.
What? Was the data faked?
Oh, no. The data is real. In principle, it's all real.
What do you mean by in principle?
We'll talk about that later. Let me first talk about the black box. The reason MAHA was able to overturn the guidelines is not just because of new science, but because they blew open this black box, letting the sunlight shine into the ugliest corners, conflicts of interest. So before talking about nutrients, let's understand procedural justice. This confrontation over procedural justice is mainly driven by our HHS Secretary RFK Jr. going up against the experts of the DGAC. It represents the clash between the new system and the old system.
The classic red versus blue showdown is playing again.
The dietary guidelines prior to 2025 were established by an expert committee called DGAC. But in the previous DGAC, declaring conflicts of interest was essentially an honor system. This led to a situation in the 2020 committee where 95% of the members had financial ties to pharmaceutical or food companies, yet were labeled as neutral. This is the defensive fortification of the defending blue team, built on a long-standing unwritten rule. The experts have the final say. There's a specific term here called the revolving door. For the past few decades, some committee members would serve as consultants for companies like Kellogg's one year, put on official uniforms the next year to write the guidelines, and then return to the food companies as board members. As long as they change their titles and don't go to for-profit businesses, but rather to foundations or consulting firms, these places are not restricted by the revolving door, but still engage in substantial policy lobbying.
Isn't that like being both the player and the referee? Wouldn't they be invincible?
So this is the blue team's strongest shield. As long as the shield can be broken, the subsequent arguments can be discussed based on the facts.
Then how did the MAHA movement counter this powerful shield?
The challenger red team deployed the Sunshine Act. The red team knew that debating the blue team would be too slow. The fastest way is to audit the books. RFK Jr.'s administrative team introduced mandatory Sunshine Act provisions. All committee members must list their sources of income for the past 10 years. Meetings are no longer closed door but are subject to public scrutiny. When diabetes patients complained about the harms of the old guidelines at public hearings, the experts could no longer brush them off. What was the result of this procedural war? If you download the new guidelines and flip to the appendix at the end, you will see the longest conflict of interest disclosure list in history. Before, they hid in the black box. Now they are exposed in the sun. The red team gave you the right to know. They handed the power of judgment back to you.
The process is transparent, and we can finally examine the content. Since these experts took money from food companies in the past, was their recommendation for a low-fat diet really for your health or for the company's financial reports? So what was the outcome of this showdown?
Judging from the newly released inverted pyramid that completely turned the traditional grain base upside down and placed protein and whole foods at the top, the red team won a massive victory, opening the prelude to this reform. Welcome back to episode 2. In the last episode, we uncovered the black box. Now, let's see what flew out when the black box was opened. Ari, over the past 2 weeks, everyone's feeds have been flooded with that image of meat returning to the top of the pyramid, right?
Yeah, everyone is cheering, saying the government has finally given steak the justice it deserves.
But as an engineer, I see this not as a victory for science, but as a truce agreement.
The 2026 guidelines you see now are actually a compromise signed after the new force and the old power fought a bloody battle. Today, let's peel back the first chapter, the Fat Wars. Let's look at the defending blue team first. They have adhered to a dogma for 60 years. Saturated fats are heart killers, plant oils are saviors. They rely on epidemiological questionnaires, but correlation does not equal causation.
What's worse is the institution's historical baggage. In 1961, the Sugar Association funded research to frame fat. The margarine promoted in the 90s was later proven to be more toxic, and in 2015, they quietly removed the upper limit on cholesterol, admitting that banning egg yolks had no scientific basis.
Every time they make a mistake, they just quietly revise it and never apologize. This is the blue team's playbook. But this time, the red team's weapon is not questionnaires, but clinical data. Investigative journalist Nina Teichholz exposed the money trail of the big plant oil companies. Clinical doctors threw out the data. We have tens of thousands of patients who successfully stop using insulin by eating more natural fats and cutting out sugar. Although clinical data won, let's look at the final score of this fat campaign. This is what I call a truce agreement. Battle 1, saturated fats. The red team stated that saturated fat is unrelated to heart disease and limits should be lifted. The blue team defended that limits must be maintained to reduce cardiovascular disease risks. Final result, blue wins. Even though there's a stake in the picture, the text still retains the 10% intake limit.
Isn't that a bit schizophrenic? The picture doesn't match the text.
It's not over. Battle 2, seed oils. The red team stated that OXLMs produced by heating seed oils are the real culprits behind arteriosclerosis, and they should be completely banned. The blue team defended and promoted soybean oil as an alternative to saturated fat. Final result, blue wins. The supply chain remains intact. Soybean oil status is permanently secured.
So this wasn't a huge victory for the red team at all?
The red team won the face with the images, while the blue team won the substance with the rules. The government dared not to endorse the plant oil myth, but they didn't have the guts to overturn the entire supply chain. Since the blue team defended the fat section so tightly, what about the grains and cereals that originally occupied the bottom of the pyramid? In the next episode, we will enter EP.3, the war on sugar and processed foods. Welcome back to episode 3. Since the blue team narrowly won on fats, what about breakfast cereals? You won't find the words ban ultra-processed foods in the 2026 guidelines.
Wasn't the red team originally trying to introduce the NOVA classification system, classifying by degree of processing?
It was blocked because this touched upon the food industry's final line of defense. The blue team's logic is, as long as there are nutrients, garbage is also a treasure. They use nutritional fortification to whitewash processed foods.
The most famous joke is the 2023 Food Compass. Lucky Charms cereal actually scored a 60, considered healthier than a boiled egg's 51.
Because the boiled egg wasn't fortified. This group of point-calculating scientists successfully blocked the resolution to define processed foods as toxins. The main leaders of the red team are the mean siblings. They exposed how food companies use the Bliss point to addict people. They pointed out the problem is not the vitamins, but the ultra-processed structure destroying the gut.
So who actually won this round?
This round saw wins and losses on both sides. Battle 3, ultra-processed foods. The red team wanted to treat them like tobacco, add warning labels, and ban sales to children. The blue team opposed labeling and advocated nutritional fortification. Final result, red minor win. No warning labels, no sales bans, just a generic reduce intake statement.
That sounds very weak.
Don't rush. Look at Battle 4, pyramid structure. The red team wanted to prioritize whole foods, stating nutrient density is king. The blue team wanted to maintain the grain base. Final result, red major win. This is a historic moment. The inverted pyramid appeared and whole foods crushed grains beneath them. Although they couldn't ban cereals, the red team used a protein Trojan horse. The new guidelines raised the recommended protein intake to 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. When you must eat 30 grams of protein for breakfast, your stomach simply can't fit cereal anymore.
There's no need to ban it. This is the crowding out effect.
The food companies lost visually, but they still have breathing room legally. But this will offend an opponent 10 times larger than the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry. In the next episode, we will uncover the darkest scene. When everyone gets healthy, who will buy the $600 billion worth of drugs every year?
Welcome to episode 4. Did you think food companies were the main villains? Wrong. Pharmaceutical companies are the real bosses.
Why? Aren't they supposed to save people?
Wall Street has an iron rule. Curing a patient means eliminating a customer. If you eat healthily and your diabetes is cured, it's a joyous event for you, but a revenue disaster for the pharmaceutical companies. The blue team's logic is chronic diseases are irreversible and can only be managed. This is like a software subscription model. They oppose using the word reversal and insist on using remission. The red team pulled in their strongest ally, insurance companies. Because weight loss shots are too expensive, insurance companies would rather pay for you to eat steak to cure your disease than pay for a lifetime of medication.
So the guidelines added a new recommendation. Lifestyle interventions take priority over medication. Since they want to promote lifestyle interventions, then the most effective and free fasting must be included, right?
This is the scariest part of this episode. Battle 5, intermittent fasting. The red team promoted a 12 to 14-hour autophagy standard as a standard therapy. The blue team's defense was dead silence. Final result? Blue wins. It's completely unmentioned in the guidelines.
Why? Fasting costs no money.
Exactly, because it's free. A free therapy is a silence therapy. Pharmaceutical companies can accept you eating steak. At least someone makes money. But they absolutely cannot accept you not eating, because nobody makes money. Even though fasting was silenced, the 2026 new guidelines broke the monopoly of medication is the only option. Now doctors can write steak prescriptions and insurance will pay for it.
We've looked at all the political and commercial wrestling. 5 great battles, red and blue both had wins and losses. But coming back to yourself, how exactly should you eat to activate your body's self-healing powers?
In the grand finale next episode, we will integrate all of this and uncover the biological mechanisms behind the MAHA system. We're done talking politics. Now, let's talk biology. Behind the 2026 new guidelines is a complete MAHA diet system. It no longer treats you as a calorie-calculating machine, but as a precision-operating chemical factory. The old system relies on willpower, but in the face of hormones, willpower is fragile. This is a destined-to-fail war of fighting against your body. The MAHA system is about repairing signals. Let's look at this chain. First, eat real food, like unsweetened oats or specific vegetables as microbial fuel. Second, gut health. Gut bacteria ferment the food, stimulating L cells to secrete natural GLP-1, which are endogenous weight loss shots. Third, satiety first. The brain receives satiety signals and naturally doesn't want to eat. Finally, metabolic rest. Don't eat if you're not hungry. Enter a fasting state and activate autophagy repair. Finally, let's review this history-changing battle. Saturated fats, blue wins, limits remain unlifted. Seed oils, blue wins, supply chain secured. Intermittent fasting, blue wins, deliberately silenced. Ultra-processed foods, red minor win, only a generic suggestion to reduce. Pyramid structure, red major win. Inverted whole food pyramid, nutrient density is king. Although the blue team defended many lines, the red team won the most crucial visual battlefield, the inverted pyramid. This is a signal telling us the Game of Thrones isn't over yet, but your health journey can start now.
Oh, MAHA movement looks super meaningful. Where are these huge hidden risks and crises coming from? Are you being clickbait too?
Oh, no. Remember when you asked me if the data was real?
Yes. So are you going to explain what in principle means now?
All diets vary depending on the person and the context. Eating the right things in the wrong way is also bad. Basically, diet is a habit, and changing it is very difficult. Often, after eating what they want, people will continue to eat healthy things, leading to overeating.
Yes, especially when eating with elders. After you're full, they bring out fruit for you, saying eating fruit after meals cuts the grease and helps digestion, and my calories just explode.
So good things are meant to replace bad things. Whole foods should gradually replace ultra-processed foods. But another very important point is convenience. You can't just eat everything raw, right? Would it really be better and healthier if instant noodles, cookies, and bread were completely gone?
When you're hungry and can't find anything to eat, it's super annoying. You can't just carry a whole food lunchbox everywhere when you go out to play. If it takes too long, the meat will spoil. Super inconvenient.
Right. This is the second point I wanted to make. If this is not allowed and that is not allowed, if the whole world stopped using soybean oil and salad oil and was only allowed to consume whole oils like cold-pressed olive oil, beef tallow, lard, or coconut oil, based on current human dietary habits and population, the supply of whole oils is absolutely insufficient. A severe oil famine and price surge would immediately erupt globally.
If you reject all the lower grade oils and only keep the top tier ones, those top tier ones will skyrocket in price, making it difficult for lower income people to even afford oil. That's not a problem of eating poorly, that's a problem of having nothing to eat.
Exactly. You can't ban Toyota from selling cars just because they aren't as good as BMW. Besides, eating it doesn't necessarily mean something bad will happen. It depends on the person and the portion size. Just find what meets your needs. It doesn't have to be completely natural, but if you have the conditions to choose and you happen to have the 3 highs, you might want to give it a try.
Wow, if even you know such a simple problem, wouldn't those experts know it too?
This is the core of the core. Everyone knows. The red team knows and the blue team knows too.
Then why are they arguing about this?
Interests. For students in schools, military rations, etc., anyone relying on government budget meals, the dietary guidelines are not suggestions but mandatory regulations. Otherwise, for the general public, you set your natural foods rules and I'll keep eating my burgers and chicken. Who cares about a guideline no one follows? Is it interesting to broadcast live fights over a guideline that few people obey or reference?
Oh, I see. As long as there are interests involved, everything makes sense.
It's not just interests. There are also political factors.
Did politics get involved too? This is a national health issue. What does it have to do with politics?
RFK Jr. initially ran as an independent candidate in the 2024 election, then withdrew and backed to Trump. This move successfully pulled anti-vax, anti-big pharma, and natural health-focused voter groups into Trump's camp. To consolidate these votes, Trump promised to let RFK Jr. lead health issues, appointing him as Secretary of Health and launching MAHA as a flagship government policy. This can be seen as Trump's political payoff, bringing their issues into the mainstream core of power.
So MAHA is not just a health policy, it's also a political trade.
Exactly. Some critics argue that Trump is using MAHA to feed specific support groups in exchange for loyalty. But supporters see it as Trump fulfilling his promises, truly challenging big corporations and mainstream medicine in a health revolution.
So after stating all these viewpoints here, aside from the calculations behind the scenes, both camps actually have theoretical backing for their health perspectives.
That's right. So when there are problems, what do they love to say the most? Oh, this is individual variation. Everyone is an individual and everyone is different.
True. The textbooks taught in school, the so-called health guidelines, are all entangled with interests. They really can only be used as a reference.
So regarding diet, what I recommend here is the so-called 3R dietary mindset.
What are the 3 R's?
3R, reduce, replace, reset. First, reduce. Assess your situation to see if you are consuming too many ultra-processed foods. Second, replace. Use high nutrient density foods to replace empty calorie foods. Third, reset. This is the most crucial part. Long-term consumption of highly processed foods disrupts leptin signals. Through 2 to 4 weeks of clean eating, you can regain the body's true sense of fullness and hunger.
Compared to simple dieting, this method is really much easier. You don't have to suffer from hunger and compete in endurance with willpower to see who surrenders first.
I hope this 3R dietary mindset can replace obesity with health and reset your body. This is The Thinking Factory. Thank you for watching the 6-part series of Dietary Guidelines Decoded.
See you next time.
See you next time.